dollar. Dirt and money, no soul. Had to go and get it, ain't no time to kick it. Got a stack of flip for my foes. Dollar. Please tell me you can hear me. Don't turn your back and don't neglect me. Just let me know if you need me. Dollar. Let me watch out for my partners. Keep my money long, get my team strong. Let me run away from my problems.
Yo, what's good, original crew? Hey, we back with more Mr. Ballen. We got the Caribbean disaster. Distressing content, see.
I see it.
Know how to pull on your heartstring, huh? Hey, man, with that being said, before we get into it, make sure y'all check out the links in the description box.
Down below.
You already know where to go if you want to first support. All you have to do is check out down below. Also, if you enjoyed today's video,
like it with a thumbs up.
Thank you. But with that being said, man, we got to get into this one.
Yeah.
This might be a good one, see. You up for it?
I'm here.
Are you here?
I'm here.
All right, let's go. Let's check it out. Let's see what it's about, man.
Today's story is going to be physically uncomfortable to listen to. And at the end of the story, I'm going to show you a video that is highly distressing. So viewer discretion is advised. But before we get into today's story, if you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format, then you've come to the right place because that's all we do, and we upload once a week. So if that's of interest to you, please encourage the like button to join the official Mr. Ballen Discord server, but secretly manipulate their account so that no matter how engaged they are on the server, they can't level up. Also, please subscribe to our channel and turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of our weekly uploads. Okay, let's get into today's story. At 4 a.m. on February 25th, 2022, a 36-year-old father of three named Christopher Boudram woke up inside of his modest home in Pointe-à-Pierre, which is a city on the Caribbean island of Trinidad and Tobago. After quietly getting out of his bed so as not to wake up his wife, who was still asleep, Christopher walked into the other room and did his typical morning exercise routine, and then afterward, he made himself some breakfast in the kitchen, and by 5:30 a.m., he was out his front door, into his car, making the commute to work. Christopher was a professional scuba diver, and he had been for over 10 years. Commercial diving is a very broad field to work in, but generally it meant that Christopher was paid to do various tasks underwater, things like inspections or welding or just moving equipment around.
Sorry about that glitch, y'all.
Things like inspections or welding or just moving equipment around. For the last 8 months, Christopher had been fortunate enough to be working for a company that was located just 2 minutes' drive from his house. It was an oil and gas company called Perea Fuel. And Christopher's duties at Perea Fuel centered primarily on the upkeep and maintenance of several of these underwater pipelines that Perea Fuel used to get the oil off of their ships and onto land where it could be processed. These underwater pipelines, of which Perea had at least 6, were basically U-shaped. They had these 2 vertical sections on either end that would jut out of the water. And then connecting these 2 vertical sections was a 1,200-foot long section of pipe that ran along the seabed at roughly 60 feet below the surface. And so one of these vertical sections was out at sea, so 1,200 feet off the coast, and ships would literally come by this opening to the pipe that was out of the water, and they would dump their oil into this opening. The oil would go down, it would shoot across this long horizontal section, and then go up the other vertical section much closer to shore where workers could collect the oil and bring it onto land to be processed. So on this particular day in February of 2022, when Christopher arrived at Perea Fuel, he was not surprised at all to find out that he and his diving colleagues would be doing some maintenance on one of these underwater pipelines. However, there was something unique about the particular pipeline they'd be working on. It was called Berth Number 6, and unlike the rest of Perea Fuel's underwater oil transport pipelines, this one had not been active since 2018. So for the past 4 years, it had just sat idle. Now, this was on purpose. For whatever reason, the company had decided not to use berth number 6, and so they put it into a sort of storage mode, where the vertical section of berth number 6 that was out at sea was untouched. It was still just poking out of the water, no changes. However, the other vertical section of berth number 6 that was closest to shore was first plugged up, like imagine putting a cork inside of a wine bottle. That's basically what they did to this vertical section, except they used this huge inflatable cork. Imagine like a huge pool toy. They basically jammed it inside of the vertical section, and then they inflated it so much that it was completely airtight inside of this pipe. And then, once it was all plugged up, they submerged this section of the vertical pipe underwater, maybe 5 or 10 feet below the surface, to kind of keep it out of the way of all the ships that would be moving around close to shore. And then also what they did is they put something called a habitat on top of the opening of this now submerged vertical section of berth number 6. To understand it, you got to picture something else, okay? So imagine you're in the bathtub and you have a bucket, and you flip it upside down above the surface, so there's nothing inside of the bucket, and you just take the bucket and push it straight down into the water. No matter how deep you push that bucket, as long as you don't rotate it to one side or the other and you just keep it steady, that air pocket inside of the bucket will remain. You can literally reach your hand under the bucket underwater and it will be dry. And so basically that's what this habitat was. Korea Fuel took a huge bucket, if you will, and they lowered it straight into the water and pressed it down and anchored it right above the opening to this submerged vertical section. So there was a permanent air pocket over the opening to this pipe. And the reason for this is because if they needed to do work on this pipe, like for example, today they wanted Christopher and his colleagues to make this pipe active again, which meant doing work on it, the divers could swim down, get inside of this habitat, stand on the little metal platform they put in there, and then they could take off all of their cumbersome diving equipment and just work on the pipe while breathing air. It was really kind of a luxury. And so after Christopher and the 4 other divers he'd be with that day got their instructions, to get berth number 6 active again, they began getting all their gear together and going over who would be responsible for what once they got down to the habitat. And then once they were all ready, they made their way out to the boat. The 4 other divers that Christopher would be working with that day were men he had worked with many times before and men he would consider his friends. Their names were Kazim Ali Jr., Yusuf Henry, Faisal Kurban, and Rishi Nagasar. Once their boat had moved just off the coast and had stopped kind of roughly over the area where below the surface was this submerged berth number 6 vertical pipe and the habitat, the divers hopped off the boat and they swam straight down. They went up and under the side of this habitat wall and they entered into this breathable airspace right around the entrance to this pipe. And so they climbed up onto the platform, they took off all of their gear, and then once they were just in their wetsuits, they got to work. Now, the job was relatively straightforward. They just needed to basically pull a lever inside of the pipe that would then deflate the big inflatable plug that had been set inside of this pipe to seal it. However, when one of the divers reached down and began to pull on the lever, it was jammed, and so they needed a wrench to kind of free the lever. And so Kazim volunteered to go back to the surface and get a wrench because no one had one inside of the habitat. And so Kazim put his dive gear back on, he dove out from underneath this habitat, swam back to the surface, he talked to the folks on the boat, they handed him a wrench, and then he swam right back down, back inside of the habitat, and then once he poked himself back up, he handed the wrench up to the nearest diver. And that diver took the wrench, he turned back around to face the pipe, he reached down inside, and he began fiddling with the lever, and eventually he freed it. However, the second this lever was activated, something horrific happened inside of that space. We don't know exactly how this happened or what exactly could have been done to prevent it, but in short, the second that lever was activated, it began to deflate this big cork that had been plugging up this inactive pipeline for the past 4 years. And when that happened, it broke the seal, and suddenly all this low pressure air that was sitting in 1,200 feet of pipeline made contact with the extremely high pressure air that was inside of this habitat. And air likes to go from high pressure to low pressure. And so the second that seal was broken, the high pressure air in the habitat expanded down into the pipe. But this happened so...
I wonder how many times have they done this before? Before, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, is this something normal? But it's been down there for 4 years, so maybe, you know, because I've never heard of a job like this before to know, like, the severity of it as far as the difficultness of it and, like, the dangerousness of a job like this. Because, this is something foreign to me. Yeah. So I'm not used to it. But this is, like, bizarre. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Like, how did we all... It had to been deemed safe for them to even been going down there anyway. Yeah, because what? They were just supposed to go down there, hit a lever. But was it... Pull the lever, and I don't know what, you know... Were they not expecting it to switch that fast? Does it normally, you know? I need some detail, man.
Low pressure. And so the second that seal was broken, the high pressure air in the habitat expanded down into the pipe. But this happened so quickly. It was almost instantaneous. It was almost like the pipe opening became the world's strongest vacuum, and it sucked everything inside of the habitat, all the air, all the equipment, all 5 men into the pipe, and it also began sucking in seawater. Basically everything was going in this pipe. And so these 5 men, they don't have their scuba gear on, went from just standing outside the pipe to feet first flying into this pipe with all of their heavy equipment all around them, and there's seawater all over them. They're holding their breath, and so they get sucked down the vertical section, they turn the corner, and they get rocketed out to sea. They are on the 1,200 foot long section, the horizontal section, just blazing a trail. Now think about this. All 5 of these guys have no idea what's happened. They're on a breath hold. They are shooting down a pipe. They can't see anything. The space inside of this pipe is so narrow. It's 2.5 feet across. And so they're getting compressed. Their shoulders can barely fit inside of this pipe. And so you gotta figure that all of them are expecting to die. But eventually the pressure in this pipe did equalize, at which point this vacuum phenomenon stopped up at the habitat, and actually the habitat kind of refilled with air. And when that happened, all the seawater that was getting pulled into this pipe also stopped. So no more air, no more seawater is going into this pipe. It's kind of like whatever went into the pipe, that's what's down there. And when this equalization happened, these men, who by this point are on a several minute long breath hold, they eventually begin to slow down and come to a stop. And by some miracle, they came to stop in a section of this horizontal pipe that was not totally flat to the seabed. It was slightly elevated, which meant there was a small air pocket where they stopped. And so they come to a stop and they just start gasping for air, and then they begin yelling out to each other, and they realize all 5 of them are alive, and they're all kind of roughly grouped together in this air pocket. And we know this because one of their cameras on their bodies was rolling when they were pulled into the pipe. And so we can't see anything because it's pitch black inside of this pipe, but we can hear them talking to each other once everything stops. And so over the course of this kind of chaotic initial volley of communication up and down the pipe, where again, these guys are on their backs, you know, they can't move at all. They're completely kind of trapped in position. And even though they're in an air pocket, there is water kind of close to their face. And so they have this little area to breathe in. They're panicking, they're screaming at each other. But in this volley, they're able to figure out that Christopher was the closest to the way they had come into the pipe, meaning his head was closest to the vertical section closest to shore, and all 4 other men were right below him. And so Christopher knew if they were going to get out, their best chance was to backtrack, head towards the way they came in, which meant Christopher would have to lead them. And so Christopher kind of found it within himself. Again, we can hear him on audio, and he told the others to calm down and link their feet onto the person below them's shoulders. And so to do that, the only way these guys could move in this tight little pipe is just by pushing with their heels. And so painfully, slowly, these guys who are very badly battered at this point, I mean, they came flying in here surrounded by all their heavy equipment crashing into them. Guys had broken bones. They were really badly beat up, but they...
This shit is like, what the fuck?
They like, look.
You know, I
just came down here to do a job. I did not expect to be getting like trapped in this little tight, narrow area.
That pipe is little. Mm-hmm. That pipe is very, very tight. You know what I'm saying? Only it's because it's got water in. You know what I'm saying? Man, this shit is crazy. A lot of it must be a very well paying job. Because high-risk jobs like that do pay well, and people are willing to risk their lives because they're like, how much do a disaster really happen? Yeah. But it takes that one time for it to actually happen where, you know?
Yeah, most definitely.
Their heavy equipment crashing into them. Guys had broken bones. They were really badly beat up, but they finally make their way until they're all linked, feet under each other's shoulders. And then Christopher, in the lead, began kind of going in reverse, inching their way up the pipe back towards the way they came in. Now, the reason they felt strongly that they needed to act right away and not wait for rescue is because they didn't really understand how this had even happened. Right. They didn't know if at any moment more water was going to pour into this pipe. They also understood that there was limited air, and at some point they would suffocate. And so with that in mind, they begin this journey. And right away, Christopher reaches the first flooded section of the pipe. Now, you have to understand, they have no idea how long this flooded section of pipe is. And so once you start moving into this flooded section behind you, once you go underwater, you're either going to find another air pocket at some point, or you're going to drown. And so it would turn out that only Christopher and the guy right below him, Faisal, were willing and physically able to attempt this potential suicide mission. And so the others, they began panicking. The others who were not going to go, and they're screaming out for Christopher and Faisal not to leave them. You can hear it on audio. But Christopher and Faisal, they felt strongly that somebody has to go to the surface and get help. And so Christopher and Faisal, linked together, begin inching into this flooded section of pipe. Pitch black. They have no idea what's going to happen. They're slowly going under the water, and they just begin inching their way on a breath hold. And by some miracle, this first flooded section they entered into was not very long. And so both Christopher and Faisal were able to barely, coughing and gagging, get out the other side into yet another air pocket. And by an even bigger miracle, in that new air pocket, Christopher, above him, he managed to get one hand above his head. He felt scuba tanks, 2 of them. And he was able to take one of them and somehow force it past the side of his body down to Faisal. And so both men suddenly had an air tank. Now they had to kind of awkwardly pin the tank above their head. These tanks are not light. If you've not scuba dived, it's like pushing a pretty heavy weight. And they had the regulator, so the mouthpiece that actually gives you the air in their mouths, but they couldn't really hold the mouthpiece in place. It was this very awkward thing they were going to do, but this meant they could now enter much longer flooded sections of pipe and potentially make it out the other side. And so, with their air tanks on top of their heads and their mouthpieces in their mouth, gripping down as hard as they can with their teeth, they continued to inch along with their heels, and they entered into more and more of these flooded sections of pipe. As they're doing this, they know they have a scuba tank, but they have no idea how much air is in these tanks. They can't see the gauge. And so it's kind of the same thing as going in on a breath hold. You don't know when you're going to run out of air because you don't know how long these flooded sections are. So you can only imagine how terrifying this must have been. But they kept on going, and finally, after hours of this, that Christopher and Faisal are going through these terrifying stretches of, hoping they can hold on to that mouthpiece and hoping they got enough air. They'd get through these flooded sections, hit the next air pocket. After hours of doing that, they reach this air pocket where Faisal starts to kind of lose it. And he starts yelling to Christopher in the total dark to stop, but he didn't have a reason, and Christopher could kind of sense that, Faisal is starting to lose it and we're running out of time here. And Christopher, he can hear the other divers that they had left behind in the beginning screaming out all the way back down the pipe. And so Christopher, he stayed composed and he tried to get Faisal to calm down and come with him. But when it was clear he wasn't going to, he told Faisal that, hey, I'm going to keep going alone then. I'm going to get us help and I'll be back for you. And so
my thing is, if they've been down there for some hours, right, trying to get this, why no rescue?
Right. But that's the thing. I guess it's for me, it's the lack of knowledge of knowing exactly what they were supposed to be doing and how long it was going to actually take. But I don't think it would have took hours to do.
Yeah.
Like, just,
my thing, if y'all notice that they haven't came up, you know what I'm saying, in like 30 minutes to 45 minutes, that should, like, in situations like this, especially happening in 2022, there should be a check-in, you know what I'm saying, time, like, hey, are y'all still, you know what I'm saying, how's everything going? At least every 15 minutes.
Something.
But they've been down there for hours trapped. And we obviously already know there's other people up there that know y'all down there because he went up to get a wrench. Mm-hmm. So, why, like, is there lack of common sense, bro?
But, again, we
don't know. We don't know.
He told Faisal that, hey, I'm going to keep going alone then. I'm going to get us help, and I'll be back for you. And so Faisal, he was still panicking, and he yelled at Christopher not to go any further. But Christopher knew he had to go. And so with the sound of his friends screaming out for him to stop, Christopher again cinched down with his teeth on the mouthpiece, continued to push this air tank above his head, and he inched his way closer and closer to the entrance of this pipe. And after reaching a very long underwater section where he knows he's running out of air, his tank hit the kink in the pipe where it went vertical again, which meant right above him was the exit. The habitat is right up there. And so Christopher was able to kind of turn and swim up this vertical section until he popped up. And it was again another air pocket, except the water level in this vertical section was not close enough to the exit of the pipe to actually pull himself out. It was like Christopher was stuck at the bottom of a well, like there's nothing he can do. But luckily there was a chain that was dangling down in arm's reach. And so Christopher grabbed the chain and just had to wait, having no idea if anybody was coming to get them. But eventually 2 rescue divers did get into the habitat, and they reached down and they pulled Christopher out of the pipe and they saved him. And when they brought him up to the surface, Christopher saw that Perea Fuel had their emergency response team on site. The Trinidad and Tobago Coast Guard was there, and it's clear they're getting ready to do some sort of rescue operation. And so Christopher, who's totally traumatized, he's badly hurt, he still ran up to authorities and told them, all 4 of my colleagues are still alive. I heard them banging in the pipes. I know they're in air pockets. You got to go back down. You got to save them. But ultimately, the authorities decided it was not safe to send rescuers down into this pipe. And so when Christopher found out they were not going to try to rescue his friends who are literally banging the pipe, he can hear them, he tried to jump back in the water to do it himself. And they stopped him. And then Christopher was rushed to the hospital where once he was admitted to the intensive care unit, he tried to check himself out to go back to the water to save his friends. But again, Christopher was stopped. For 2 whole days after Christopher was rescued from this pipe, his colleagues, the 4 other divers, remained trapped in the most claustrophobic, horrible situation imaginable, and they continued to bang on the pipe and make noises that could be heard on the surface, but nobody did anything. And so finally, on February 27th, the noises stopped inside of the pipe, because all of the men died. They either died of suffocation because they ran out of air in the pipe, or they died from one of their injuries, or they attempted to do one of those long underwater sections of pipe on a breath hold because they didn't have scuba tanks, and they drowned. On February 28th, 3 of the divers' bodies were recovered, and the final body, the 4th diver, was recovered on March 3rd. It's unclear why Christopher and the other divers did not do something to equalize the pressure inside of the habitat and inside of this pipe before undoing the plug, because this vacuum effect, which is known as delta P, is actually easy to anticipate and relatively easy to prevent. But the investigation into exactly what happened and who is to blame is still ongoing. However, the only survivor, Christopher, and many other people who are following this case, they believe the 4 deaths are directly attributable to Perea Fuel, who were primarily responsible for not allowing a rescue operation to happen in those first 2 days, where you could clearly hear the sounds of these divers banging on the pipe. And so to finish this story, I'm going to show you the final footage taken by one of the divers, Kazim, who was the one who got the wrench and brought it back inside the habitat, handed it off, and then that wrench was used to push the lever, which created the vacuum.
Are you okay to watch?
I mean, well, he's not showing them. It's just showing it being open, right?
I don't know.
I'm fine. Yeah.
I'm just making sure.
Handed it off, and then that wrench was used to push the lever, which created the vacuum. You'll see in this video that it looks like nothing is going on, and Kazim is just inside of this habitat, and all the divers are fine, and then it's like his camera just turns black. What's happening there is he was pulled so quickly into the pipe that it looks like it was a cut of the camera, when in reality, that's just how fast everything inside of that habitat was pulled into the pipe. This video is highly distressing. Viewer discretion is advised. So that's going to do it. If you got something out of today's video and you haven't done this already, please encourage.
Good.
Yes. Yeah, I'm fine. Gee.
It did. That happened so fast, though.
It definitely did.
How he said, like, literally, like.
I mean, I understand that it was risky to maybe send somebody down there, but how honestly risky was it? You know what I'm saying? Like, on what scale? Like, I understand, like, you know what I'm saying? But that's your job, like, to go rescue. Like, I'm just trying to understand. Because there's no way that 2 whole days y'all can hear them and did nothing.
Because y'all possibly had cut the pipes to... Nah.
No, or because y'all have, like...
Had something to pull the pipes
like, going... Well, I'm just trying to figure out, because I was trying to remember how it was shaped or whatever, or like sent something like down for them to kind of, for y'all to pull them up. Like, I don't know. I'm just trying to think of all possible.
Because you got to realize,
I guess not.
You got to realize some people were still in like,
in different areas. The 2 of them was in one air pocket, and then the other one was, I understand that. But
I feel like Faisal, I really feel like they could have rescued Faisal. The Faisal was the one that's closer to Christopher.
Yeah. So most definitely he could have been rescued. But I'm just trying to think. I feel like all 3 could have. But then again, that's the thing. Like I said, I lack the knowledge of knowing how this operates and how it was and exactly, you know. So it could have been like super.
I'm just trying to see if I can find like the shape thing. Like the image of how the thing was shaped. I'm going to.
I think you're going.
I want to say I thought I had one in the beginning too.
Oh.
I could just be going to.
Oh, there you go.
So they were like right here because at the end of it, he had posted. They were like right here. Faisal had to be closer to right here because Chris. It wasn't long before Chris. And then they said they was trying. They was at this for hours. This pipe don't. It's long. Right, but
you also have to understand the position and the weight.
It's long as fuck.
Yeah, it's long. Like looking at a picture, it doesn't seem.
Yeah.
But it is.
It's 1,200 feet. So
right.
that's how many, like 12 football fields. That's long. Like that's no. No. Mouth. Cross it out. But still, you know what I'm saying? It's 3 years. I'm trying to do quick calculation.
I just wouldn't have been able to like just knowing like myself, knowing that there's 3 people. Was it 3 or was it?
It was 5 and all.
It was 5 and all, so 4.
And how did he get sucked up to the point where? Because the guy that went with the wrench.
Because he was at the bottom.
Yeah, he was at the bottom. So you would think like the fact that all y'all got mixed up the way y'all did, where Christopher was the lead. Christopher was already up there.
Yeah.
So you would think, boom, boom, boom. You know what I'm saying? He would have been the. Damn. And then he still had did he still have on his scuba gear? Because it looked like he hadn't been able to take his off before it took him. And it took him so fast. They boom, boom, and you just gone.
Just gone like that. That is so crazy.
A blink of an eye, you gone. And can't escape. You know? Like, and it's just the fact that the other guy just, like, you know what I'm saying? Faisal just pushed through. Like a little bit more would have been rescued. You know what I'm saying? Fear. You probably tired. You just like, I can't know. Like, so many thoughts go through your head. Like when you're in situations, it's just like, what? So, even this, why the Coast Guards ain't do shit? You know what I'm saying? That's what y'all there for. Y'all are real search and rescue. The company should have had some kind of procedure set in place. So who do you blame in this situation?
I don't know. What situation?
It's a freak accident, but it looks as though the company doesn't want to take any responsibility. So that means either paying out like some kind of financial assistance or rewarding them with some type of financial benefit from the deaths of each individual. Because they ain't trying to pay up that. Because they ain't no telling how much y'all trying to sue them for, possibly. Or did y'all even try to cover any funeral expenses? Right.
It's definitely a freak accident, but in the same sense, if I was like one of the family members, for me personally, I just want to been able to just sit with that. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Because 2 whole days, no one did nothing. Absolutely nothing. Like, could we have not come up with some type of plan or strategy? Like, nothing. Like, I'm not going to send my people down there because it's dangerous. I mean, I do get that. And I'm trying not to look at it from a selfish point of view.
Yeah.
So,
but a lot of people look at it like this. Y'all know how dangerous this job is, right? Why don't y'all have something in place for if any possible thing,
any possible situation that can happen?
Yeah, you
for
have
there to be some type of like, oh, we're not gonna too dangerous, too risky. Like the what?
Fact.
The job in itself seemed risky, but we still came down here.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? Like this. I mean, I get it. Like, I get it. It's their job, but at the same time, it's your job to do with. Like, I don't know. I'm just trying not to.
Cause
I just couldn't.
My whole thing is still like on a job, like any job, no matter what it is. If you sign up for a job and it's on a dangerous level and something happens to you, that I do feel like that at the end of the day, that job is still held reliable for your life being taken while you're on that job, no matter what. And then on the top of that, we didn't even make an effort to save you. Say, for instance, somebody gets trapped in a machine at any job here, and they're still alive, and it's like the company like, well, it's too risky to really get them up out of there.
So just leave
because somebody else can get slipped up in it. So we're gonna leave them, and just hope for the best. And you made a good point.
So for me now, with you saying that, I'm gonna say just for me again, I could be looking at it, putting myself in like the family shoes, but just looking at it, I feel like it's the company's fault. Like in a sense, even though it was a freak accident, it's the fact that you said that y'all didn't even make an attempt. Y'all didn't make an attempt to go down. Y'all just made the decision to be like, no, we're not going to do that. It's too risky. But y'all could at least make the attempt. Because like I said, y'all could at least saved him. It wasn't that far. What was his name? Yeah, y'all could have saved the closest man. You know what I'm saying? At least. Mm-hmm. At least try.
And then did y'all even go down to even see like how far they were inside of it because my thing is, I'm also thinking like, why we can't just cut the pipe? Is that too much of a safety risk to cut the pipes and try to drain the pipes? Or is there even a possible way for us to pull the pipes up out the water? That's something that has to have been a possibility, I feel.
And then I'm thinking, I'm like, they couldn't have been like super, 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 super far away from where y'all was at if y'all was able to hear them.
They were like right here.
That's what I'm saying.
You got all that pipe left, but they weren't even in the middle. They were still
That's
close.
What I'm saying. They was close enough to surface for y'all to be able to hear them plead and their screams and agony. Like, I just make it make sense. It's, again, like you said, it's the attempt for me. The fact that y'all didn't even attempt to.
And the only reason why I keep going back to it, because I'm still thinking, all right, what all could we have possibly even tried
to do?
Did y'all not want to go in there try to damage because y'all still got to drain all the water out and bodies. So how did the bodies end up coming up? They must float it because it's a dead body now. So I guess you can drain it now. And so they were like, all right, they're dead. Let's try to suction the water out, and the bodies will pop out too. Which is fucking, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. And then because that's oil, you know what I'm saying? That's still one of your oil things. Yeah. Like, just say fuck it, you know what I'm saying?
And I guess the reason why I can't like speak on like every possible thing that they could have done or what they should have done is because I don't really
know what kind of resources they possibly had to be able to.
Well, not even that. Well, probably that too, but it's just the fact that I don't understand this line of work per se.
Yeah,
so
true,
true. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, that's the only thing. But still, if it was my family member, I wanted y'all to like at least try.
At least try.
2 days, y'all could have came up with nothing.
Facts.
2 whole days. Like, come on.
And to hear them in agony for 2 whole days. And then Christopher got to realize that I was just down there. Just there. Just with you. I have to experience and live with the fact that I know if I was down there, I know what y'all would have did for me as well. Which was nothing. If the order was just changed a little bit, and he was last or in the middle or whatever, and decided to, you know. But you got to realize though. That shows you y'all Christopher had he did have the biggest fight out of all of them to. And sometimes that's the difference between life and death is the will to fight. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I know he probably beat himself up for it, but you can't. I feel like a lot of people would, because you had the will to fight. You know what I'm saying? Others they gave up, but you did. Like Faisal had an opportunity to reach this. He gave up, so you can't hold that. You know what I'm saying? Because some people will hold that against themselves. Like, man, if I could have just encouraged them even more. The guilt. Yeah, it's survivor's guilt. And you know he probably possibly dealing with survivor's guilt. But how, like, you can't honestly hold yourself against that because you had the will to keep going. Others may not have.
I get that. I do.
And that's what it's called. It's survivor's guilt.
But I'm like...
It's because you made it out and you know, but you know they did. And you know, you sat there in the hospital knowing they're not even trying. And you like, damn. I'm
like, y'all got all the gear. Y'all have gear.
But I'll say this. The one thing you keep saying with that is the space. They have limited space. And that's the only part I'm like, with the search and rescue, it was going to be hard no matter what. I get it. Because of the limited space, nobody can really go down there with a scuba tank on their back. Yeah. Because they don't have space for that. So basically what you would have told people to go down there.
I get it.
Is going on a kind of a suicide mission to go get them. Because they would have had to hold their breaths. Right. And without you knowing like how many true air pockets.
Right. I get that. And that's what I stated. Like, I get that it was risky. But I'm like, we couldn't have come up with another plan. I get it. And I guess, like I said, it's me being selfish because I'm putting myself in, like, the family shoes. You know what I'm saying? But, I understand the risks. I understand it was risky, and like you said, it would have been like maybe a suicide mission.
But there had to be other options, and I wonder, did we even think of all the possible options that could have been taken to even try?
Like, did y'all exhaust every single?
Did we think about cutting them out?
Yeah, I don't know. But again, like I said.
But can you even cut them out underwater?
Yeah,
I doubt it.
In the end, the whole situation is...
It's very sad situation.
Super sad.
And then to see the visuals.
Yeah.
And
just to hear it. It's the...
Panic.
The fact that you could hear them. Like, it'd be different when you can see stuff without the, like, audio.
Yeah.
But when you can hear it, it hits different.
And it was, like Ballen said, it was like pitch black dark.
Yeah.
You in the pitch black dark, can't move. Just imagine, you know what I'm saying? You sitting there in a position where you really like this, can't move, it's pitch black dark. You could talk to each other, but we down there can't breathe.
Yeah. And again,
it's hot.
Right.
Water.
And again, let me just backtrack just real quick. I wouldn't have wanted anyone to put their life in danger, you know.
But I would at least wanted y'all to try something. But I would have at least
wanted y'all to like try to exhaust every single option, every single possibility of see what y'all could do. But again, we don't know for sure if they probably was trying to figure something out. We don't know for sure. But
y'all gotta do something besides standing there watching them, hear them banging.
But just knowing that they were down there two days, y'all can still hear them, and it's just like that would have messed up. That would have messed up my mind. Like, you know what I'm saying? But yeah.
Hey, man. With that being said, man, make sure y'all let us know how y'all thoughts. What are y'all thoughts and opinions about this situation in the comment section down below, man. I looked up when I was looking up. It is an ongoing situation that's going on, and they are trying to figure out like some stuff behind it. So.
Yeah,
it's ongoing. Like right now, they're in course and stuff, like regarding for it. So.
Yeah.
Hey, spam us up. Let us know y'all thoughts and opinions, man. But as always, I do go by the name DJ The Kid. This is
We are. Had to go and get it. Ain't no time to kick it. Got a stack of flip for my folks. Dollar. Please tell me you can hear me. Don't turn your back and don't neglect me. Just let me know if you need me. Dollar.